In 2006, Atlas Corps was founded to address critical social issues by developing leaders, strengthening organizations, and promoting innovations through an overseas fellowship and virtual learning programs of skilled professionals from around the world. Our community began with an inaugural class of 6 fellows who hailed from Colombia and India. In 15 years, Atlas Corps has empowered 1,000 leaders from 104 countries, partnered with 300 host organizations, US embassies, and our network of supporters to multiply impact domestically and worldwide. Atlas Corps leaders represent the richness of diversity, inclusion, and cultural awareness. Now, more than ever, we need to keep building bridges between social change leaders from around the world. During our 15th anniversary year, Atlas Corps continues to engage social change leaders as fellows and virtual scholars. Our fellows serve in the United States and virtually from their home regions. Virtual scholars enhance their professional skills, build global networks, and prepare for leadership in home communities during our Virtual Leadership Institute, a new online leadership development program launched by Atlas Corps in 2020. This year, we invite you to celebrate with us our 15th anniversary. Thank you for supporting our community of global changemakers. Thank you for supporting Atlas Corps.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Zachary Morris, and I am the Senior Manager of Global Engagement at Atlas Corps. I'm also here with our fellow Marta and our other fellow Vitalis, who will be joining us soon. And we're going to tell you about Atlas Corps. So Atlas Corps engages leaders committed to social change in 12 to 18-month professional fellowships at organizations to learn best practices, build organizational capacity, and return home to create a network of global change makers. Fellows serve full-time at host organizations in the United States, addressing issues that complement their expertise. They increase their leadership skills through hands-on experience while developing invaluable connections to learn effective practices. The fellowship is open to people worldwide who are not US citizens or residents, have at least a bachelor's degree and 2 years of experience, and are 35 years old or younger. Fellows must be committed to living on a basic living stipend and to returning to their home country or region at the end of the program. I also want to tell you about a special focus for late 2021 and early 2022 fellowships. We're currently prioritizing applicants who have skill sets that match the roles our host organizations frequently request. These leaders should have at least 2 years of full-time experience in one of these skills. 1, communications and marketing, partnerships building or business development, monitoring and evaluation, and data analysis, or technology and engineering. If your experience falls outside of these skill sets, don't worry, you're still invited to apply, but we're just going to give priority review to candidates with these 4 skill sets during this current vetting process. Feel free to type all of your questions in the comment sections, and we'll respond to you at the end when we get to our frequently asked questions. I'm going to go ahead and start off by having our fellow Marta introduce herself with what we have as an Atlas Corps tradition, which is the 5 facts. Marta is currently serving in our blended fellowship program, which combines 4 months to 6 months of service from one's home country with 10 months of service in the United States. All right, Marta. Well, so great to have you here. Go ahead and let us know what your 5 facts are.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So, as you've heard, my name is Marta, and I am originally from Poland, although I am currently residing in Lithuania, and I'm serving at Atlas Core itself as a training manager fellow, which means that I take care of anything related to training and education in the organization. A social issue that I am very passionate about is intercultural and global citizenship education. And a fun fact about me is that every other week you can hear my voice on the Lithuanian national radio.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. We also have our other fellow, Vitalis, who is currently trying to connect, but we will introduce you to him once he's able to join the broadcast. All right. Well, then we are going to go ahead and ask Marta a couple questions to learn more about her experience with the fellowship so far. So my first question for you, Marta, is what were you doing before the fellowship and what made you decide to apply to Atlas Core?
So my journey probably begins around 2 years ago, where I first moved to Lithuania to do a similar project, a similar type of fellowship, but within the European Solidarity Core structure. I was doing a 10-month internship in an NGO called European Foundation of Human Rights, giving them a shout out right now. And after that, after finishing that project, I was looking for something else, some other project or job in the nonprofit sector or the broad non-governmental organization sector. It took me a while. I was in and out of different jobs. I worked a little bit for the local media, writing for the radio, writing for newspapers. And then a friend of mine, who was also serving in Lithuania, a Russian friend, Alina, she recommended Atlas Core to me. I applied like a year ago. It was about the time when the pandemic was starting, so I had a lot of time on my plate sitting at home. I filled out the application, and a few months later, I got an offer from Atlas Core inviting me to join the program.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for talking about your experience about applying to Atlas Core and your motivation behind that. My next question is about your role at your host organization, which happens to be Atlas Core. What's your role? Talk a little bit about your responsibilities, and then also talk about one accomplishment you're proud of so far.
Right. So I mentioned this a little bit about my role at the very beginning. So my position is called Training Manager Fellow. This means that I am responsible for all and any educational activities that happen within Atlas Core, and we have a few audiences that we direct our educational activities towards. So one group is fellows that participate in what we call Global Leadership Lab throughout their fellowship. So they not only serve at their organizations, but they also receive training in areas such as leadership, for example, or project management. And a second group are Atlas Core scholars. So in November, Atlas Core launched its Virtual Leadership Institute. It's the first initiative of its kind where people from all around the globe, social change leaders, in the age group similar to our fellows, for 7 months go through a training program that tackles the field of leadership. There is also a lot of project management. They create their own project. So in my role, I'm responsible for coordination of the program, for developing the curriculum, making sure that all activities, whether it's like compulsory tasks or electives, are up and running on the online platform that we are using, making sure that our live calls go well, that we have engaging keynote speakers, and also then collecting feedback and evaluation to create reports so that we can make our programs better and better. One thing that I am very, very proud of is that in March, we launched 2 new cohorts for our Virtual Leadership Institute, and their orientation call The first call that we had together, it had about 130 people on one call. It was the biggest call that I have ever done, and I think it was the biggest that Atlas Core has done in a while, and it went great. And then we had another one just yesterday where we hosted scholars from 4 cohorts on one call where they engaged in the topic of peer coaching. They listened to an amazing keynote speaker about peer coaching and what it is and how it works, and then they engaged with one another in smaller groups to support each other, because our groups of scholars, those cohorts, we have so many just amazing people there from all over the world with so many different backgrounds and education and skill sets, so they can just learn from one another so easily. It's beautiful to see them exchange.
Wow, that's so amazing to hear, Marta. It's looked like you've been able to get your hands on many different aspects of the Virtual Leadership Institute in really forging these virtual connections with leaders among the world. So great to hear about that experience. My next question is actually a perfect segue, talking about how Atlas Core is global. I'd love to hear about what networks you were exposed to that you weren't necessarily exposed to before the fellowship. And maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience with your fellow fellows too.
Sure. So, when I was coming to my fellowship, I thought, this is not that new. I have worked with international teams before. I've volunteered and worked in international NGOs. But I was a little wrong, because sure, I was used to working with international teams, but they were still very European, diverse, but European, or there was not that much diversity. And now I can really, really experience what it means to work with people from all over the world. So one very big community that I'm so happy to work with are the fellows and scholars coming from the region of Middle East, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. They are on daily basis educating me about their countries and their cultures. And because I must be honest, I was a little bit oblivious to some of the differences between their countries. We don't learn that in school here, so I know it's not an excuse, but it's much easier to learn from people that you get to interact with personally, and just learn from them, learn about their countries, and what's important for them, also what issues or problems their countries struggle with. So every day there is something new that I learn, and I just love it. Another aspect, or like another network that I'm very, very happy to interact with, is that among our fellows and scholars, there are so many inspiring, powerful women. There is just so many female leaders that just make me want to get up in the morning and work, and make the world a better place, take those little steps towards my goals. Yes, just so many amazing stories, so many powerful projects coming from these ladies. I really, really love it, and you can really feel the sense of support among one another. It's quite beautiful.
Amazing, Marta. I love that you highlighted our female leaders that are part of Atlas Core. Actually, 60% of our overall fellow population tend to be female, and that was our theme 2 years ago, highlighting how we're empowering female leaders around the world. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Perfect. Well, my next question is, what have been some of the challenges of the fellowship so far, and how have you overcome them?
Well, so the main challenges so far are mainly of the digital kind, because as I'm still serving from Lithuania, I have to connect with my team and with everyone that I'm working with virtually. And there's a number of technical difficulties, whether it's the internet connection, or whether it's on my side, on the other side. Also matching schedules. It's been especially challenging with all these daylight saving changes that we've had. First, you had them in the US, 2 weeks later, we had them in Europe. So there is always, or very often, some level of confusion when it comes to the time zones when scheduling things. Fortunately, there is a number of tools that help you with that. I cannot go on without Google Calendar. This is like my best friend now. If something's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. That just doesn't happen. So that's one thing. Getting used to working basically in like the later part of my day, because my colleagues are 7 hours like earlier. So when it's well, I think it's 9 a.m. in the Eastern time right now. So it's 4 o'clock for me. So it was just shifting my my schedule and my routine a little bit. But this is not anything that you can't get used to. It just required a little bit of time management, a little bit of planning, and being conscious about how you use your time throughout the day, which hours you dedicate to resting and self-care, and which hours you dedicate to work. But that's it. I feel, pretty comfortable with my fellowship right now. There are no bigger challenges than that. I assume that once I go to US, once I get to really immerse myself in the American culture and get to know people there, there will be definitely some experiential learning happening on daily basis as well. For now, I am in the comfort of my own desk or my own bed, my own laptop. And it's just about making sure that my internet works and that I'm connecting to a meeting at the correct time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for speaking to some of the challenges of our blended online fellowship, which is, again, that's a program we launched amidst the pandemic in order to still, have a fellowship that connects leaders from around the world. We look forward to having Marta come to the United States in July with her cat, potentially.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully. Great. Well, I did see one question, Marta. Someone had asked how long the organization, being Atlas Corps, took to respond to your application since it was submitted.
Okay, that's a good question. I don't remember exactly, but to give you like a general timeline, I applied, I think, in March or April last year. I got into the semi-finalist pool probably around June or July, so you have a few months there. So that was another round of, that was the first round of interviews, and then checking my profile. And then from the time I got into semi-finalist pool, I was asked whether I would want to participate already in the November fellowship, but because of other engagements, I postponed it to another to another class. So I was about to start in March, but because of I was off cycle, it's a little bit confusing. But I am part of class 41 that started in March, but I started in January. So so it was like between March, my first application, and then January next year when I actually started. But the offer I got around Christmas. So that was a very, very nice gift. I got this email from Atlas Corps saying that, we matched you with an organization. The organization is Atlas Corps. And that was quite funny because when I was going through Atlas Corps website to see, okay, what are the organizations there? There's so many. There's around 200 organizations that you can be matched with. And I am the kind of person that likes to have everything, kind of under control and know what I'm signing up for. So I created this Excel sheet where I had 3 different like ways of marking an organization. If I'm somewhat interested, quite interested, or like this is where I want to go. And I reviewed all those 200 organizations, but I didn't know serving an Atlas Corps was an option. So that was a nice surprise, and I think it's a really good match.
Amazing. All right. Well, again, thank you, Marta, for answering all of the questions about the fellowship and even the application process, which is a perfect segue to our next part of this webinar. And it's going to be talking about the application process. So As you can see on the screen, we have apply.atlascore.org. That's where you can go to find all of the information about applying to the Atlas Core Fellowship. It's a multi-step process. The first step is to fill out an application. The application requires a copy of your undergraduate transcript or diploma and 2 references. Attaching a resume or CV is also encouraged. And you may be asked to submit samples of your work to provide evidence of your professional skills. If your application passes review, you will then be invited to an Atlas Core Skype interview or phone interview by one of our selection board members. And if you pass the interview stage, you will become a semifinalist and you'll be considered for potential placements at a host organization. If you're accepted as a semifinalist, that doesn't mean that you'll get a fellowship placement. It really depends on finding a host organization that's the right fit for your skills. Our priority application deadline to be considered for programs starting in October of this year or January of 2022 is May 16th, 2021. Next, I wanted to go a little bit over how you can make sure to have a good application. What are the different aspects of that? The first is just basic eligibility. You should have a bachelor's degree, be proficient in English, and have 2 to 10 years of experience, be 35 or under, and be committed to returning home at the end of the fellowship and committed to living on a basic living stipend. While valuable professions, we don't typically place applicants who have most of their work experience in teaching, translating, or the law. And before you're prompted to fill out an application, you'll have the opportunity to take a short eligibility quiz that will help you determine whether or not you should apply. The reason why we typically don't place applicants with experience in those 3 areas is because we just don't have a lot of fellowship placements in that, or we're unable to process visas for teachers or lawyers. The second part of the application is you want to make sure that your English is clear and concise. So have a friend who speaks English, really read over that application well. So I'm sure Marta, as she was submitting her application, very vigilant about making sure the English was correct. Skill sets is another very, very important part of the application to emphasize. The most successful candidates demonstrate their expertise in a specific skill set throughout their entire application, including their resume, biography, and short essay section. So it's important to give specific details and examples when you're describing your skills and interests. If you say you manage volunteers, how many volunteers do you manage? If you work in fundraising, how much money have you raised, or how many successful grant applications have you worked on? In the skills section of the application, mark skill 1 as the primary skill that you have the most experience in and that you really want to illustrate throughout your entire application. You can also mark off a second skill and a third skill as skills 2 and 3, and that should complement your primary skill set. Yes, and I'm seeing in the Facebook comments, skill sets, exactly what makes you stand out. Third, in relation to skill sets, you may be asked to compile a work sample that can demonstrate your experience and responsibilities in that skill set. I think for most of the skills that's required. So you really want to think about what, in your work history can you submit that really provides proof of your ability in that skill. Another part of a good application is a bio. It's really important to write a strong bio, which is the first essay question, since this is what potential host organizations see where you'd be placed as a fellow. We send the bios of semifinalists out to different host organizations. And again, that's the first thing they're reading. So you want to demonstrate, all of your history, including your skills within that bio. You can really think of it as selling yourself. You have 30 seconds to convince a host organization to accept you. What do you want them to know about you? So those are some of the aspects of what really makes a good application and successful finalist to be placed as a fellow at Atlas Core. So those are different aspects of the of applying for Atlas Core. We're going to start reviewing applications soon, so apply early. As Marta had mentioned, it takes about several months and maybe even longer for some fellows to get through the very thorough and competitive application selection process. This will be the first of several webinars that we'll be doing throughout April and May. Our next webinars will focus on fellows' experiences and the different skill sets that we're recruiting for. Our live session will be on YouTube on April 14th from 9 to 10 a.m. EST, featuring communication and marketing professionals and their experience at Atlas Core. And you can always learn more by checking out apply.atlascore.org. And if your question isn't answered there, then you can email us at apply.atlascore.org. And really thankful for Marta to share her experience. We look forward to reading your applications. Amazing. So I see a couple of questions in our comment section of Facebook. So our first one I see is for Marta. Would you say that you've grown in capacity while on this program? And I think that question has to do with the professional skills that you are growing so far and continue to want to grow throughout the fellowship.
Yes, absolutely. So my fellowship started at the end of January. So I've been only doing this for a little bit over, 2 months. And I can definitely say that I've grown, because even though I am doing to some extent things that I already knew, so if it's, coordinating events or, building curricula, I am doing it in a different organization. I'm doing it for different audiences. So there is always, little things that are different. I am, for the first time in my life, a contact person for over 300 people. So managing this level of communication on a daily basis and helping our scholars and fellows throughout different, whether it's tech issues or organizational things, this is something that is definitely new. And yeah, working with people from all over the world, working in an American organization, so getting to know the American working culture. This is something that I find very, very enriching, because it is, one thing to know, to work with people that speak your language, that understand those, subtle language cues that you might be giving them, and it's different to know that, you might not be understood instantly, or 100% the very first second you try to convey a message. So there is so much more coming, through this fellowship, other than just my role. And I find in my fellowship that it's a very sustainable learning environment. So I do, things that I know and that I'm good at as a trainer and facilitator. But there is always this, space for growing. And there is always this, little bit of room to get out of my comfort zone and try something new, but also in this sustainable, safe way. So it's not overwhelming, and I very much appreciate that. Then one thing that doesn't maybe exactly relate to the question, but I definitely feel like it's worth mentioning, is that to work in such a diverse environment is just a blessing. I have worked both in the nonprofit sector and in the private sector, and it's just two different worlds. And for me, who really does care about so many social issues, around the world, and I do consider myself a global citizen to some extent, to work in a place with people that also care about so many different things, it's just empowering. And it feels like I am in the right path to not only fulfill my personal goals, but also the goals or the aims that I would like to achieve in the context of social change and leadership. So it's been the last 2 months, 2 months and a half, have been just joyful, and I'm very, very thankful for them.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that experience. We have Vitalis who's been able to join us. I'm going to bring him into our broadcast, and he's going to go ahead and talk a little bit about his 5 facts. So welcome to Vitalis. Glad to have you here. I'd love if you could introduce yourself with your Atlas Core 5 facts.
Hi everyone. Sorry for the delay in logging in. I was having technical challenges. So yeah, my 5 facts. My name is Vitalis. I'm an Atlas Co fellow from Zimbabwe. I'm currently serving at Atlas Co as the Communications and Engagement Manager Fellow. The social issue I'm passionate about is youth development. And one fun fact about me is that I used to DJ. Yeah.
Awesome, DJing. That's so much fun. And what was your favorite song to play as a DJ?
It depends on the time, but one that has been like constant would be the Swedish House Mafia song, Don't You Worry Child. That has been like, yeah.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Perfect. Well, we were just talking about growing professionally during the fellowship. And Vitalis, I know you just started as a communications and engagement manager fellow at Atlas Core, but what are some professional skills that you hope to develop or are already developing through this fellowship experience?
So for me, the experience already getting so far, the professional skills that I'm looking to develop would be digital marketing, because most of my work is channeled towards that. So we're currently running a recruitment campaign, and digital marketing, because of the coronavirus, plays a huge role in terms of marketing in that area. So that's why I think it's one of the professional areas that I would like to grow in. The other area would be communication, both oral and written communication, because there's a lot of communication that is exchange. So I believe that one of the things that I would gain through my experience with the fellowship is I would want to grow in my communication, both written and verbal. And lastly, I think one of the other skills that I would get is fundraising. One of the campaigns that I'll run, participate in towards the end, is organizing the Atlas Co at 15 celebrations. So I will be part of the fundraising team there in the communications team. So I want to get experience also in fundraising. I think it would be useful to me serving back at home as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for talking about the professional skills that you hope to develop during the fellowship. I'm going to go to an audience question. I see that someone posted a question. They've been selected as semifinalists, and they're waiting matching from a host organization. And they're asking what they can do, to be matched. So after Atlas Core completes placement for each class, we email instructions to semifinalists who are not matched for that class, but are still eligible for placement on what their next steps to remain in consideration for the fellowship. So usually you should update your availability every time you're a semifinalist and you're not matched in a certain cycle. You're going to be asked to put yourself as available for the next cycle. So you definitely should make sure to do that. And you could even update your application, following these tips around the skill set. Even if you're are a semifinalist, and updating your application with any new and relevant information to ensure that your application communicates your expertise in the skill area. Atlas Core does continually reassess semifinalists to determine their fit for future placements. And in some cases, Atlas Corps may ask for additional information or another interview. Amazing. All right. So another question I see here is about the university degree, and the point of view that there may be many young and deserving people who have been in leadership positions and are doing incredible work in their countries, but may not necessarily have a university degree. Or some have diplomas, but they meet all other requirements. We do require a bachelor's degree, and what we mean by a bachelor's degree is some type of 4 years of post-secondary education in a university or college. And the reason why we require this is because that is one of the requirements for our visa and for that to be processed to come to the United States. I definitely think there are a lot of deserving leaders around the world, and education doesn't always determine whether you'll be successful in the fellowship. But yes, we do have that requirement for the visa process. Great. Well, another question I see here is, let me just take a look. About the application processing time. I wanted to go a little bit over that. It really depends in terms of how long the application process takes. I would say it usually takes about 2 to 4 months to be vetted completely. But again, our applications are open year round. And although we do have a priority deadline, again, May 16th to be considered for October and January, and it depends on when you apply. We always encourage you to apply early before a deadline in order to have your application reviewed faster. Vitalis, I wanted to go ahead and ask you another question. If you had any advice to aspiring Atlas Corps fellows of what to do during the application process to make themselves competitive.
Okay, so for me, my advice would be that they should, because we want to do the application one go. So my advice would be take your time, draft your essays, take time to draft essays, take time to read through how you are responding and what you are responding to. Because if you try to go at it in one go, it might be cumbersome or too much to someone. And that's why you find out that along the way, some people may stop and might not complete the process because they might feel like there's too much. So I think pacing yourself during the process, making sure that you're addressing each section's needs as it is needed, and making sure that you draft your responses before inputting them into the required field. So I think that's one of the things that one can do in order to make sure that the application is good and it is competitive as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for those tips. Really, really important. Perfect. Well, I wanted
something, Zach.
Go for it. Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to really emphasize what Vitalis said, because the application for Atlas Corps Fellowship, once you started, you realize there is a lot. But what you need to know is that there is a lot for a reason, because Atlas Corps, as the coordinating organization, and then organizations that host fellows, they need to know who is the best fit. They need to have a concrete evidence of like, okay, this is our candidate. This is the skills that we need. So this is definitely not the type of application where you can just copy paste things from your previous CVs or from your previous cover letters. This is the kind of application where you need to make yourself a big jug of tea, sit down, have a quiet evening or afternoon, draft it, and then another evening go over it. Install some, spell checking software in your browser, or give your application to an English-speaking friend to go over it. And still, read over and read over and read over, and really mention things that, that stand out, because things that might be obvious to you, that are obvious to you because of your education or because of your previous employment, might not be obvious in the US. So really do bring all of these special initiatives or the special projects that you did in your previous employment to the application.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that added context. And yes, a Grammarly, if you haven't heard of it, is a great software for helping you, correct all those English grammar and spelling. I suggest you download that just for anything professional you do in English. I wanted to reiterate that the priority deadline to apply is May 16th, 2021. I see another question about, and this is a priority deadline to be considered for those placements starting in late 2021 in October and January 2021. So definitely, try to apply again by that date to receive priority consideration. I see another question of, what is the potential for applicants working in the higher education sector, being finance officer, to be considered for a placement? Again, some skill sets are more frequently placed than others, but in terms of professionals who have background experience in finance, that is something that fellows that we do place from time to time. But thank you so much for asking that question. Another thing I wanted to address is about the COVID-19 outbreak and how that has affected Atlas Corps. We are currently, as you can see, accepting and reviewing applications from all countries outside the US for our in-person fellowship in the United States. We expect that most or all fellows will be placed into the full 12-month fellowship. As the vaccine becomes widely available in the United States and the rate of COVID-19 is lower, we anticipate being able to bring fellows to the US safely. If for any reason it's not possible to bring individual fellows to the US in 2021 due to travel, visa, or safety guidelines, we will discuss alternative program options, which may include our blended fellowship, combining remote service with our in-person service, which is what Marta and Vitalis are currently doing. Something exciting was that last weekend, we brought 8 fellows to DC and Dallas to start the in-person part of their fellowship after about 14 months of not having a fellow come to the US. That was a very exciting milestone of us being able to do that, despite the pandemic that is still having grave impact around the world. Awesome. I see another question here, an applicant from Madagascar. What advice would you give for an interesting resume? And I wanted to actually throw that question over to Marta or Vitalis to see if you had any reflections on having a good resume to include as part of your application.
Sure. So, well, of course, you need to include, all your basics, such as, education and the formal titles and everything. But the title doesn't really, convey much. You might have the most interesting and, cool sounding title of your position and not really do much there. And it can be the other way around. It might be, a form of assistant somewhere, something not sounding extremely exciting, but you might be doing a lot of interesting jobs. So what I'm trying to say is that if you really think about what is this, key work that I'm doing, what are the projects that really made my organizations grow, those are the things the potential host organizations might want to hear, because they will know that in this way you might also help their organization grow. So let's say you coordinate volunteers in your NGO. Like Zach said before, say how many volunteers did you coordinate? Was it in one region? Was it in more? Did you develop any recruitment programs, educational programs? If you're in monitoring and evaluation, how do you approach reporting? How do you approach evaluation? What tools do you use? So really be specific, because what the host organizations will be looking for, are these skills and knowledge and also attitudes that complement theirs and really fit into the profile of a fellow that they are looking for. So there is, those skills that, for example, in your country might be quite obvious that, they come kind of by default with a certain position or a certain field. But it might not be the same in the US. So you want to emphasize them, even if they are obvious to you, because this is what will let the people on the other side know what kind of environment have you worked with before, whether it comes to software or different methodologies or different tools. So really bring them forward and brag about things that you have done, because we tend to be very, very shy in our applications. Like, oh yeah, I just did a little bit of this, am I worthy of becoming a fellow? Yes, you are, absolutely. So tell us all the things that you have achieved and join this community of social change leaders.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think Marta just said it all. But yeah, include as much experience as you have, as much detail on your experience in terms of your role in a particular skill set, in a particular organization that you are part of, or where you did voluntary work as well. Just make sure that you give as much detail as possible in terms of the role that you played, in terms of the softwares that you engage in or using, So those things will help actually, put your CV in a good light in terms of how the host organization will pick.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for those great tips for your resume. One thing I want to emphasize is if you mark skill 1 as, for example, communications and marketing, that's the primary skill that you really want to demonstrate. It should also be shown in your resume. If I'm looking at that in your application, then I also want to see, okay, your work experience, your resume, all of that, backs up that is your primary skill. Even your secondary skill or the third skill that you may mark in your application, make sure that is reflected in your resume. Awesome. Well, I think we've answered all of the questions from the audience. So we're going to go ahead and close this Facebook Live session. Again, my reminder to you all viewers watching is to look at our website, look at the frequently asked questions, apply.atlascore.org. And really make sure that you understand all of the information about applying before filling out that application. And our priority application deadline to be considered for classes in October and January is May 16th, 2021. And I'll just answer one more question about the skill sets. Someone is asking if you have skills in many different areas, such as communication and marketing, partnerships building and business development, hiring and evaluation, and data analysis. Which skills should be the primary? Again, your primary skill set should be the skill that you have the most experience in. So you should have at least 2 years of experience before marking any skill on your application. But if you have, let's say, 4 years of experience in communication and marketing and 2 years in partnership building and business development, then perhaps you should mark communications and marketing. So again, that primary skill number 1 is the one you want the one you have the most experience in and the one you want to have throughout your application. All right. Well, then I think that's a wrap. Again, feel free, especially for those communications and marketing professionals, to attend our next webinar, which will be next week. Events.atlascore.org has all of our upcoming sessions. And feel free to let your friends know if you think they'd be a good fit for this fellowship about our upcoming webinars, and encourage them to apply. Again, I wanted to thank our speakers today, Marta and Vitalis, for being present here and answering all of the questions about our fellowship, and really giving our viewers today the insight into what our fellowship is. So
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Of course, great to have you both. So with that, I hope everyone has a great day. Bye.